Welcome to the Manufacturing Matters podcast with the Council of Industry. Join us as we bring you inspiring stories, interviews, and insights from across the Hudson Valley that will revolutionize the way you think about manufacturing. This podcast is proudly sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, a leading accounting and advisory firm dedicated to helping businesses thrive in the manufacturing sector. With their industry knowledge and strategic guidance, PKF O'Connor Davies ensures that manufacturers have the financial insights and support they need to achieve success.
Frank Falatyn, President of FALA Technologies. Welcome to the Council of Industry podcast.
Thank you, Harold. Glad to be here. We've been working for quite a few years, and it's nice to have a little conversation and not have to really be building anything or manufacturing anything at the moment. So
absolutely, we can chat. So tell us let's start there. Let's talk about FALA Technologies. Tell us how it came to be and what you guys do.
Sure. So a lot of the members of the Council of Industry were second generation. In September, we'll be celebrating our 77th year of being in business. It was started by my father while he was still in high school. He was he was actually this was right after the Second World War. He was doing some side jobs in a machine shop, and they took such a liking to him that two of the tool makers there at the time asked him to join him as a partner, and they went and started their own business. And back then, there was a lot of work coming out because a lot of these people were being let out of the military after Second World War. But all the colleges were getting full because they had the GI Bill that they were going to be going to college, a lot of them. And my father always wanted to be an engineer. So he went to work and he started this machine shop called Ulster Tool and Die at the time. And because he was under 18, his sister had him sign the paper documents for him.
Wow.
So until he could turn 18, then he could become the owner himself. And a long story short, he had to wait a few years, and the two men came to my grandfather and said, "We'd like to have your son join us." And he said, "Only if he can go to college." So after he turned 18 and was accepted at Pratt, which was a very good school at the time down in Brooklyn, and my grandfather was an engineer on the railroad, he would go down every Sunday night down to Brooklyn and go to college, and he'd come up every Friday night and work at the shop. And for the first 2 or 3 years, he never took a salary, nor did the other guys, because they were starting something off. And that's kind of how a lot of these manufacturing companies in this country were built, Harold, is just, it didn't take a lot to get in business. There was a place down on Al Street, which was very famous in New York City, which is where all the machine dealers were. And you went down there with just a few bucks in your pocket, and they made some business deals with you where they would bring the equipment up to your facility, and then you had to pay them off. And there were no banks back then that you had to get bank credit for. And they started off very simply. And everything was done.
What kind of machines did he need? He probably would just drill, lathe.
Drills, lathes, Bridgeports and still are today being used here, because they were the backbone of the industry manufacturing that helped us win World War II, as well as other machines made by Cincinnati Millicron. So everything was being done by hand, and the accuracies were probably 0.005 to 0.020 inches, which is, in our terminology, we call it 5 thousandths to 20 thousandths. And now we work at probably 10,000 times tighter accuracies than what they did. Wow. But now that's because we have the skills and also the CNC computerized equipment to do that. So he always was a small shop, even as IBM moved it. This is before IBM even came into the Valley.
Right.
And then when
1946, you're talking, right?
Yep.
Wow.
And then when IBM did come in, obviously a lot of these small shops started doing IBM work, and they weren't doing computers at the time because computers weren't part of IBM. They had plating machines to do, I think, copying. They were making typewriters, and they made some stuff for the Korean War. So they were making some type of guidance system, I believe, or parts to it. And then when IBM started getting into the computer business, they were the key business in the Hudson Valley. And a lot of us small manufacturers really took a benefit from that. And like my father, there were 5 children in our family, and we all went on to become engineers.
Yeah.
And then one actually went to work for IBM, and then I was a chemical engineer working for Dow Chemical, and then I went to work for General Electric, and then my brother John left IBM, and I left GE at the same time, and we came back and worked for my father because we wanted to work in his business. And then as they passed away, I've ended up taking over the business. So it's been lots of trials and tribulations, many good times, and then a heck of a number of really tough times.
Sure, sure.
Really, really
I
tough
think I met
times.
you. I think I met you. It was still Ulster Tool and Die, and
Right.
you were kind of considering the transition and the move to your current location. I mean, talk about a little difference about the kind of the evolution, I guess, from that time from the
Yeah.
name change, but really what the business does.
Well, I talk about that a lot, and thank you for asking that. So, my brother was the quintessential ultimate salesman. Whenever he would walk into a room, that's when the party started, and he was always great, great golfer. He could go to all the golf.
I
I don't golf at all. I am
I
strictly an engineer that wants to stay
I
and work in
I
my
I,
company.
I can confirm that John was the life of the party
Yeah,
and
yeah,
terrific athlete, fun guy. So
yep,
actually, he was the craft beer guy before craft beer was cool. He was
yep.
definitely
And he was,
definitely
yeah,
that. Yep.
we would have done well under his leadership, but unfortunately, as
Yeah.
you know, he was playing basketball at the YMCA before work, one workday morning, and he had a heart attack right on the court floor, and he died. And I never was outside the company, so I had to
Right.
take over the company. And one of the first things I did was I called you and I asked if you would let me be on the board of directors to take his
Sure.
place because he was just newly elected to the board. Because I really didn't have the guidance or didn't really have the knowledge of how to actually run a business.
Mm.
And I tell you, it's been a godsend for me that the Council of Industry has helped us back from the days when we didn't know anything about the quality control systems that we have in place today. A lot of the training programs were started. I can remember sitting down at the outside porch of Mount St. Mary's
Yeah.
Desmond campus, just strategizing what we were going to do to get a program to train our supervisors, which we now have, and it's been a huge success for a number of decades now. And then you and I have been meeting together, talking about how we're going to work with the community colleges once the community colleges really were tasked. This is probably 15, 20 years ago now, to actually be the training source for our
Mm-hmm.
workers as they have to be upskilled because of this transition from the Japanese car companies coming and taking over the auto industry. And then we had to kind of improve our manufacturing skills so that we could compete globally because
Mm-hmm.
coming out of World War II, we were the global manufacturing place for the entire world.
Yeah,
So we had to.
no, it's funny you say that, but I did hear a statistic that at the actual conclusion of the war, which is now 78 years ago, and at that time, 80% of the world's industrial capacity was in the United States.
There you go. And
80%. Just this desolation of Europe and Japan and Korea, even and China, it was just so devastated. And we had ramped up and were providing all those resources for really all the allies. That it is an amazing number. So you're right. We were completely dominant at that time, but that changed.
well, not only that, Harold, but you and we worked together for so long, and we've seen an incredible change because we weren't there. I wasn't there at the very beginning when my father was starting the company, but we've seen manufacturing decline over decades, over a generation, let's say. And, the manufacturing members of the Council of Industry that are alive today were the ones that hung on by their fingernails in many ways to compete against global competition. And we had to get better. And that's what we had to do. If we, like you have a saying, if you're manufacturing today, then you're an advanced manufacturer because you wouldn't
There's
be
no other
otherwise.
choice, right?
There's no other choice. And so we've been through that. And
Yeah.
then to see this revitalization and how manufacturing is now well respected occupation to build up again in this country. And the numbers speak for themselves. You and I and a few other members of the council worked with the P-TECH program, which was put together by Andrew Cuomo, to build this special high school program that the manufacturers could help define how they were going to teach their students to become better than what was occurring at the time. And we helped them found Hudson Valley
Pathways.
Pathways Academy. And when you think about that, there wasn't many kids going into that program, and the BOCES CNC program that they had there was having trouble getting students to come into those programs. And now today, those programs are overfilled. In other words,
Right.
they're turning students away from going into those programs because everybody recognizes that not everyone has to go to a 4-year college to actually get a really good paying job.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
we've seen everything.
yeah, and actually, kind of along those lines, can I take you back in your Wayback Machine? You talked about some highs and lows, and obviously your brother's passing is a true tragedy. But out of that, you guys really have evolved. But you've told a story about IBM's downsizing that I
Yeah,
think is important, because you were talking about the region having ups and downs, and I think that seminal moment in the early '90s was kind of critical to your company, whether you were going to live or die, thrive or not. Share that story and kind of as a launch point for what is now FALA Technologies.
sure. So back then we were basically a captive shop, as were many companies in the Hudson Valley that were small manufacturing family businesses. 90% of our business was IBM. And then in the early 90s, IBM decided, after they built that 300 millimeter chip fab, and they recognized the expense of doing that, that they decided to get out of the hardware business. And basically overnight, our orders went from survivable, that we were able to make a living, to not having enough orders coming in to survive. And we do semiconductor skills pretty well, but we didn't really have a broader base of customers like we have today. So I can remember working with my brother John to go out and try to find other companies that weren't being affected by this downsizing of the semiconductor industry, at least as we were seeing it here. And fortunately, we had some tough times, but we were able to make it through. And then we diversified, and it was very, very difficult. And what we were seeing is IBM was still having a shop, but they were cutting back their people also. So we did hire a bunch of the tool makers and machinists that they were, downsizing. So we had a talented pool of workers, but it was tooth and nail kind of trying to go out and try to find the work that we could do and be able to be successful. And what was a downside that actually became a positive was IBM at that time had a great reputation because they had their own tool rooms, they had their own machinist training programs. And so a lot of these other individuals, they scattered and left IBM and worked in various parts of the East Coast as well as other parts of the country. And because we were working with them when they were IBMers, we started getting some new customers because they were recommending us to
That's
their
great.
purchasing group. So IBM was very good to this Hudson Valley and very good to our small little, mom and pop shop of probably about 12 people or so in those days. Now we're almost breaking 50, which I'm trying to stay under because I don't want to be over,
For good
because
reason.
there's
Good
good
reason. All the
reasons in
red
terms,
flags.
yes, all the red flags kind of go away in many cases. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to stay under 50 people. But my father would, and I'm in a building now 4 times the size of what he had as a small shop, and that was taking a risk. When we knew that IBM was not going to be our customer anymore,
Sure.
we just couldn't sell making parts. We had to actually have enough space here to do clean room assemblies. We bought more equipment over time to improve our abilities, and it's now paying off because this semiconductor explosion that we're seeing in terms of fabs wanting to be built in this country is what's feeding us right now. It's
Yeah.
not all of our business, but we are very, very deep right now into developing not the machines that are going to go into the fab today, but the machines that are going to go into the fab in the future. And
Mm.
that's our business right now, is working with the military and working with the semiconductor companies about inventing new technologies. And it's our sweet spot because we don't do production work here. We don't want to compete as per a dollar amount in terms of who's the cheapest gets the job. What
Right.
what we do here is we do the really hard stuff that most people can't do, and it's all development work that we do here. And we have our largest customer. It's a global company. Come in last week to audit us because they haven't been here a few years because of COVID, and we can show them that we can do every type of manufacturing process in terms of machining, welding, grinding, EDMs, lasers, water jets, tool makers, everything that is available to manufacture something. We have every one of those pieces of equipment,
Yeah.
and we have skilled people that know how to do that. So when I say hard to make stuff, there's many times where we'll have to make something and use multiple different operations, and it's very rare. And they admitted it. They don't have any other suppliers that have
It's got to
all this knowledge under one roof.
Well, it's got to be a huge advantage for them from an intellectual property sharing and
Yep,
everything else. I mean, just to have that in one spot where they, much more control over what's happening,
yep,
right?
yep.
That's interesting. So you mentioned earlier that you hired some IBM folks during the downsizing. You probably don't have too many of those
No,
still around with you.
no, that fed us with a skill. In fact, when we hired those machinists, and maybe one or two engineers at the time, they taught us what we didn't know as a small company.
Hmm.
And now we know that, and now we've gone way beyond that. And so my mission for the remainder of my career here at FALA is to get young people brought into the trades and into manufacturing and upskill them before this knowledge base that we've built over this past 40, 50 years, 77 years total, if you count my father's generation of them teaching us, so that we can have this continue on after I'm gone. And that's
Well,
really what I work on day and night.
yeah, and I would think in your business in particular, and obviously I could speak for the Hudson Valley community to say that you are the driving force between a lot of really positive workforce development initiatives and some really effective programs. Not you mentioned the Pathways Academy before that, but I would think for your business too, in particular, as you described all those different processes that you can do under that one roof, that means a lot of different skilled craftspeople, skilled trades that you need to have and
That's right.
and transfer that knowledge. It's not like you just need 25 CNC machinists and that's it, or you're always going to hire 10 a year forever. It's a little more complicated than that in your
Right.
business.
And that's why the apprenticeship program that the council enables us to have is mission is really critical for us being able to upskill people. I just got off a phone call with Dutchess County Community College an hour ago, talking with them about this new manufacturing center on Route 84. And they're not going to be doing the CNC machining, which is our key work here, and the fabrication work that we do here, but they're going to also be setting up training facilities to do the other types of skills that FALA also needs. It's not just making something, it's being able to integrate it into small subsystems and then into larger machines, being able to program them and also do all the wiring and electrical interfacing. And so that's where they're going to be strengthening us. It's not the major part of our business, but for a lot of our other members in the council, they need that more than they even need machine parts, because most of them are building their own products. We don't build
Right.
our products. We build our customers' products. But it's all coming together. This
Yeah.
workforce and this educational partnership that we've established is going to really start to be super critical for us to get through this transition of not having a skilled workforce anymore.
Yeah, it's a grind. And actually, you just flushed a memory from the recesses of my brain. You mentioned the Hudson Valley Pathways Academy and the formation committee. We are the industry partner, as you are very well aware, because you're a key figure there. But when we brought it together and we were asked to start, planning for the school before it even opened, you're the first person we call. And I remember something you said around that table with the folks from BOCES and the community college, Dr. Corey in particular. They asked the question, what do we need to be teaching these kids so that they're ready when they graduate to work for you? And you said, I have no idea. That is 6 years from now. I don't know what the actual skill is, but we need to be teaching them to learn and to have some foundational abilities and some leadership skills. And I think that really was a pivotal moment. You could see the light bulbs go off around the table where they just said, yeah, you know what? That is a long time ago. I think you even mentioned the Internet of Things, which no one had heard of at the time,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
And now it's ubiquitous. It's like in our language all the time. It's part of our lexicon. So
I had forgotten about that, but now we're so far beyond that, Harold.
I know,
Now,
right?
now
But at that moment,
we have specifics. We know exactly what we need to have skills trained as part of these apprenticeships, And the colleges are helping us, you know, zero in on providing these skill trainings, not only on the job as what we do here, but
Right.
also in the classroom. So it's amazing how far we've come in
Yeah.
the last 20 years.
And
Really, it's what's making us survive today.
yeah. And as you say, you mentioned our apprentice program, and certainly the community colleges being a part of the Pathways Academy. We didn't even mention our friends at Pine Bush and in
Yep.
Goshen and some of the other schools that are doing good work. It is starting to come together as a network and an ecosystem, so to speak, where we are starting to see the infrastructure of people to come out and can actually get the skills that they need, but also the interest. It's like almost like a chicken and egg thing, where if the infrastructure's there, people will be interested. But it is exciting to see it come together.
I have to laugh. There was this one summer intern that wanted to work here at FALA, and he wants to be a CNC machinist, which is our top skill, and it's the most in-demand manufacturing occupation in the entire country is a CNC
Mm-hmm.
machinist. He's only 15 years old. So he's going to turn 16 like in another, I think it's next month sometime, and he'll get his driver's license and he wants to come here. And he still has one more year of school left before, so he'll work part time. It's amazing, Harold, that we're finding these kids coming to us wanting to work. 5, 10 years ago, we didn't think it was possible there's any
Right.
young person out there that even wants to think about going into
Right.
manufacturing. So it's changed, and
Yeah.
we're lucky to have survived and see these times that we're gonna make it work and make this successful, because this
Yeah.
is what our ancestors did for us. And now we gotta do it. We gotta do it for the next
We got to the
generation.
next generation. That's
We
true. It's
have
true.
to.
That's true. So
Yeah,
I know that you have some otherly abled people there that work at FALA. And like many things, you're kind of ahead of the curve in this regard. Talk about your STEPS program. Talk about some of the folks that you've hired and some of what you've learned about working with that population and how you've been able to accommodate that and make them assets to FALA.
sure. There's a long story that I won't get into, but basically, we had a young man that we wanted to hire that would not speak, and he had an engineering degree from SUNY New Paltz. And I learned through the community colleges when I was invited to come to a meeting about working with the disability industry. I went to that meeting and they put me in partnership with a support agency here in Ulster County. And from that starting point of trying something that I didn't know how to train anybody or work with anybody that would not speak, how am I going to do that? And now I can do that with my eyes closed, because this person, he talks, he works with everybody in the shop. He has no anxiety anymore. He has no fear. He went through a 2-year apprenticeship program. He's now a certified New York State quality auditor, and we would be lost without him. And what's nice about this young man is he is on the spectrum. He has high functioning autism. He made his way through college. He has a wonderful mom that would never give him an accommodation, is what they call it, to compensate for what he can't do. He just pushes forward. When we hired him, he didn't know how to drive a car. I said, that's okay. We can make an accommodation. We can set up a place for him to come in early, because his mom used to drives by here when she goes up to Albany to work up in Albany. And his mom said, nope, we're going to teach him how to drive. And now he knows how to drive. So that's the type of individuals that are out there that he would never have gotten a job in industry otherwise. And I just took a liking to him because I could see he had some potential when I met him, but I didn't know what to do. And now I do. And I'm really striving now to teach other manufacturers and other industries that go beyond manufacturing how to work with this overlooked population of key people that would make great employees. We don't start work till 7 o'clock. I come in at 6:30 every morning. When I come in at 6:30 every morning, there's 2 pickup trucks and there's a car sitting in the parking lot at 6:30 with guys that are on the spectrum, okay, that have autism, listening to the radio, waiting for me to open up the door so that they can come in at 7 o'clock. How many people would love to
Right.
have employees that want to come in and they want to go to work? This is what I'm not saying it's going to happen for all the individuals in this target pool, but there are some real outstanding individuals that any company would love to have if they took the time to work with me and these agencies that I work with and help us try to upskill these to a point where they can then work on their own.
Right.
And they have the abilities to do it. I have a whole process that certifies them so that we know which ones can work in manufacturing. I do the training myself to make sure that if it works here, it can work at their facilities. And I would really welcome working with other manufacturers, and I am working with other manufacturers
Right.
to get these people be placed in other, because
Yeah.
I'm a small company. I don't want to be above 50.
Right.
I'm up in the 40s right now. So as I find these people, I'm going to skill them up, and then I want to pass them off to other people that can use these people.
That's terrific. Yeah, and the truth is, we're getting older and going to be retiring, and you got to fill these positions, and there just aren't enough people. So, looking at alternatives, and I keep reading, I keep seeing examples of where it is a good fit in manufacturing for particularly people with autism. That there are roles that really lend themselves well to that population.
Yeah. Honestly, I working with this community, I came to the realization of two things. One is a third of my master craftsmen are on the spectrum because they're hard to manage, but they really just want to focus on work. Don't ever have them talk to a customer. All they want to do is work. All they want to do is focus on, and our work requires tremendous amount of concentration because of
Sure.
of the tolerances that we're working with. The other thing I learned is that I'm on the spectrum, and
Really?
I never knew that. There's other kids in the family, and they said, "Yeah, Frank, we all know you're on the spectrum, but you didn't know it, but we all knew you were on the spectrum." I'm high functioning autism, and I look back now, and when I was in grade school, I was being put into these tests and sent to these clinics, and I had no clue what was going on, and I just never, and I forgot all about that until I started thinking about it, and they brought some of those things up when we get together as a family reunions, and so I know what this is about. I just want to focus on the work, and that's kind of like who I am. So I'm very fortunate here that I have a good staff of salespeople and front office people that really run this company and bring the work in. My job is to get the work done here once they win the awards.
Could you talk a little bit about the work you're doing with Ulster County? You've been with the Workforce Investment Board for a lot of years. You've seen the function and dysfunction of that system, and I believe you're kind of bringing some solutions or some possibilities to TH community.
Well, as I've worked with education, as we all have, Harold, we know that they work different than that industry. They think
Yes.
differently. They're under different rules and regulations. But one of the things that I've learned is that there's a brick wall between the school systems and the employment areas. And I actually have a chart that I show this because when someone graduates from school,
Which by the way, for the audience, on his chart, there actually literally is a graphic of a brick wall.
Yes,
On
yes,
the chart. It's
because
very clear what he thinks.
when students are in high school and they leave high school, the whole system changes, and the dollars that are spent to educate them go away, and they have to go into an employment world where there's a lot of colleges, there's a lot of training programs, there's a lot of support agencies, there's jobs out there, and it's all funded by completely different funding sources in the public sector. And parents don't know this, students don't know this, so there's no transition. But more so, there's no coordination. And there has to be industry jobs that we now have well defined. There has to be a coordinated system where a region can understand exactly what industry jobs, what they need, and then work through the school systems before they close that door behind them as they leave school, that they're ready enough to be trained in the employment side of this when they jump over the wall. So this is my work at the county level. I'm working with Ulster County. You've been involved in some of our workforce summits where we need to come together with an entity, which may be the county, maybe the Workforce Development Board. I'm hoping that will become it. My goal ultimately is to make the workforce development boards of the entire country, which are funded under the U.S. Department of Labor, that they'll become the entities that coordinate this transition from education to these high-skilled jobs, so that it happens without us having to push it like we're doing
Right.
now. Because we have to
It's
go into
just
the
part of it.
schools.
It is the system becomes that as opposed to the system working against it.
Right. There's no coordination, and they're spending all this money to do these programs, and we don't know about them as manufacturers. Parents don't know about them as what they can do with their children, and there has to be a way to do this. And that's what I'm working with the county and looking for your help to do this.
It really, I mean, from even your graphics, your images, and everything we've talked about, it really comes down to communication and, tearing down some silos, tearing down some bureaucracies, or at least making them a little more flexible. And I think, from our industry standpoint, we need to be, actually, you just said it, they speak different languages. We need to be willing to speak their language, or at least understand their language and their constraints and their issues, instead of just complaining about it, so that we can solve the problem and work towards a solution instead of just pointing fingers.
And most importantly, help them understand what we need them to do that they're not doing today.
Right.
And then help them change their system, whatever it might be, so that they get the support that they need to then do what we need to do for the next generation of workforce. There's a lot of handcuffs on these different agencies because they don't fully understand the jobs that are waiting out there. And especially in the disability industry, they don't have high expectations for when these people come out of the system that they're going to get a high level job. So it's really underutilizing a lot of skill of people that are just being overlooked and underappreciated today. So that's my big thing, is to really bring this entire county, and then hopefully next thing would be the entire Mid-Hudson Valley, to be able to coordinate so that we have the right places to send people, and it happens seamlessly. It's going to happen without us having to keep pushing it, Harold. You and I are getting too old to do this.
Well, maybe we'll see it, but maybe we'll see it one day.
We will see it. We will see it.
Frank, thanks for all that you do. And Frank Falatyn, president of FALA Technologies, thank you very much for being on our podcast today. And we look forward to continuing this struggle with you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Manufacturing Matters, brought to you by the Council of Industry and sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, accountants and advisors who understand the unique challenges and opportunities in the manufacturing sector. We hope you gained valuable insights and inspiration from today's discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.